Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, and thanks for coming to our event tonight. I'm Michael, event host with RJ Julia. Our program tonight features not one, but two wonderful, acclaimed authors, Michael Cunningham and Amy Bloom. We're here to celebrate Michael, Amy, and also Michael. It makes it easy to remember. Yeah. We're here to celebrate the release of Michael's newest novel, Ziggy, which actually comes out tomorrow. Yeah, so it's a sneak preview. Yeah. We'll hear from our authors. We'll have time for a few questions from the audience, and then immediately after our program, you'll get a chance to have your books signed by Michael. We also have one of Amy's multiple books. We've got one of her title in store also at the front register, and she's agreed to sign copies of her book as well, if you'd like. Michael Cunningham is the author of 7 novels, including Snow Queen, A Home at the End of the World, and The Hours, which was a Pulitzer Prize winner a few years ago, as well as the Penn Faulkner Award. Yes, that we maybe keep the resumes brief for sake of time, but amongst many other things, he was born in Cincinnati, raised in La Cañada, California?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, okay. He received a degree in literature from Stanford University and MFA from the University of Iowa. He's currently a senior lecturer in English department at Yale University, and he lives in New York. Amy Bloom is the author of 4 novels, White Houses, Lucky Us Away, and Love Invents Us. She's also written 3 collections of short stories, including 2 that were finalists for major national book awards. Her first book of nonfiction, Normal, there's a subtitle there also, but Normal is a staple of university sociology and biology courses. Her most recent book is the widely acclaimed New York Times bestselling memoir, In Love, which happens to be the one that we have at the register. Yes, please welcome Amy Bloom and Michael Cunningham.
I'm going to start. Your book is out. I think we have been friends for 30 years, and I
we just basically are going to do in front of you lovely people what we've been doing for 30 years,
but without a drink. I know. As I was halfway to Madison, I knew I forgot something.
It wasn't just my.
I do have my. But I really wanted to say that one of the things that so moves me about this book, I guess I could quote myself. I sent Michael a text when I got the galley, and I said, "It is so beautiful to see you and hear you as the voice that moves, as the God that holds all these people in their hand, which is how I always think of a novel, or the kind of novels that both of us write, in which you are the voice and the all-seeing God, but then if you're lucky, these people that you hold in their hands take on a life of their own. And it's not, when I was starting out as a writer, I had heard an interview with Alice Walker in which she said that for her, when she was writing a novel, the characters came into her bedroom, sat down at the end of her bed, and told her what to write. I have never had this experience. In my life, when people can't even sit at the end of the bed, they say things like, "Where's the Tylenol?" They don't say, "Let me reveal my soul." And what I feel in this novel is that the characters came into Michael's vision and said, "Let me reveal my soul to you." And then you, with your extraordinary gifts of language, can bring them to the rest of us. So one of the things, I have to write these down, I didn't get all choked up. You know, you've done this structure before, you can't fool me. 3 parts, you know, in Specimen Days, which The Hours, I think, is often one of Michael's best known novels, but certainly not the only one that plays with the element of threes.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if you might talk a little bit about that, both structurally and also emotionally in the triangle, part of what draws me to that.
I'd be happy to. I have a few things to say about TV. Well, for one thing, just thinking in terms of a story, two, look, I have two of it right here, can only be in direct relationship to each other. If I were to convey this bottle of water to San Francisco, you could still draw a straight line between the bottle of water and the microphone. Let's just say, add a third thing, my knee will do, thank you. And, then suddenly the combinations are literally infinite. Three is a magical number and has been for a long time, from the Holy Trinity for people who believe in that. 3 acts in a play. In physics, you get a theory based on sort of 2 aspects of phenomena. And if you find a third one, it almost always means you have to start the theory all over again. The hydrogen atom is just a nucleus with an electron. And it is possible to predict consistently what a hydrogen atom will do. An atom of helium, which has a nucleus and 2 electrons, is entirely unpredictable. No one can figure out how an atom of helium is going to be made because it has 3 elements. 3, right?
I'm a fan. I have 3 grown children, and I always think about the 3 as the sort of inherently unstable.
Yeah.
My children aren't here, so I'm free to say that. But it's always moving.
Yeah.
The alliances are always shifting, and I think that's one of the things that's so interesting in the book, especially with what is for me the central family, which is the husband and wife and the beloved brother. One of the things, well, since I brought up kids, I wondered about is that the children, Violet and Nathan, are so present. And so, this is the kind of thing I would say about my own children, and they would say things to me like, that's not helpful. So, peculiar. They are so themselves. They are so themselves. And I wondered, did you know how, we're sort of magpies, we find the pieces, but I wondered if there was a bigger chunk that came from some kids you had observed, or just from your own self, having been a child, or sort of where did they pop up from something in particular?
No more or less than adult characters do. I was simply equipped with information I'm sure shared with many of us here. There is no such thing as a generic child. That they are almost always fully recognizable at 40 from when they were 6 months, right? And I teach a writing class, and I every now and then a student will be critiquing this story, and there was, I don't think an 8-year-old would do this. Okay, what 8-year-old? Right. Classical violin, maybe not. Well, Stephen Sondheim, you know what I mean. But I just know that children are already very complicated beings. And I just let them be themselves.
Well, there was a particularly, for me, particularly moving section where the mother is talking about the way in which she will know her son, even as he is becoming, even as he is shedding his kid self, and in the process of becoming the adolescent self, and the process of men, and that she will, I don't know, it was very touching to me because it seemed to me such a thoughtful, feelingful assessment of part of what it is to be a parent, which is that it's you know, you love to see them come, you hate to see them go, but there they are moving along and dropping cells, even as it's still so attached to the way they used to pronounce spaghetti or whatever.
It just had the intimation that the boy who was a little bit older is going to be her date.
Yeah.
He already thinks of himself as the person in the house who gets her, the person in the house who loves her more thoroughly than anyone else, and that she and her daughter, who's only 5, are not going to have that.
Yeah.
So you can just, and she might be proving wrong, but I don't think she is.
No, and I think that way of sort of looking at it without, I always feel about your writing that it is actually always compassionate, but it is not sentimental in the bad way. You're welcome.
I mean, I think most writers I know have some, I don't want to call it a demons or pretentious, but you know, a sort of thing you know to watch for in yourself. Right. Yeah, and mine is trying to keep it compassionate without sort of going toward the edge of sentimentality, but not going over.
You know, you and I, a long time ago, had this conversation about language, like the prose, the sentence by sentence, and the content, the thing itself. And I remember it was a long conversation about icing and cake, right? And how much you want, and how you find that balance as a writer. So now say something about it.
Very much aware of the fact that any story is made of language. I am a particular fan as a reader of extreme language. I understand the appeal of the lean and the plain, but I kind of like, I like it when a writer is really pushing language and trying to make it work in ways that it has not traditionally worked before. And so I'm very careful with it. I'm very careful with my own language. I want it to be vivid and alive, and yet not so vivid and alive as to make me seem like some kind of, oh, I don't know, child brought up to play the piano for the house. You don't want to see show off. A great teacher once told me, grade every line in something you write, either A or B, and then go back and rewrite the A's, because those are the show off sentences. And I have my students are amazing. And I have one particularly remarkable student who, however, cannot be talked out of ill-chosen similes.
Oh,
and you know, and I think I've said to all of them, that kind of looking at young women in particular, I love a simile. Don't get me wrong, but I worry that at the level of perception, you're seeing what you're seeing in terms of what it resembles, and which keeps you from seeing the object or person themselves. Let's talk about the object or person, then let's talk about adjectives, and then and only then will we move on to resemblances. And they all kind of went along with it, except this who snuck in her last writing exercise with only one simile, but you know, which was a big reduction from her. But still, there was a simile in which a woman having sort of emotional breakdown in her garden, and collapses like a folding chair. And I said, I want to meet you ahead of time. Next week. So, and we went out onto the green behind the English department building. So you stand over there. And I collapsed on the grass. And I looked up and did that look to you like a folding chair? So yeah, which is a sort of elaborate answer to the fundamental question. So much of it is about balance and about trying to be just enough and not too much and not too little. And I found when I look back at some of the most lyrical stuff, I know Marilyn Robinson, Jane Phillips, there's still a surprising number of plain simple sentences. You almost always too much language, too little language, but yeah, too little language, but too much, and it's like an opera that's all arias.
Yeah,
and you need to give it little heights, more big heights, and then let's just calm down. They put on their coats and went off the floor.
right. There's a lot to be said.
Yeah. Not like a flock of raven colored angels. That's full of the door.
So what do you think? I know you love to teach, and I know you love the kids at Yale, where you've been for a long time. Do you feel like they have some influence on you, or any bearing on your writing or your writing life? I mean, besides taking up time, I obviously don't.
Yeah.
My views on it.
I feel like I teach one semester a year, so I'm with students for a little over 3 months. With the prominent exception of Amy, most of my friends are not writers. And yet for 3 months every year, I get to sit in seminar rooms, 2 of them, 3 classes, with 12 each incredibly intelligent, incisive, sensitive, younger people, and talk to them about how it works. I talking to this woman about better no simile than a kilter one is actually helpful to me too. It's a constant reminder.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, I have more. I need this. I don't like that question. I mean, I gave it a lot of thought, but now I'm looking at it one more time. I'm like, oh, it's practically a terrible symbol. Okay. I feel like there are qualities that we give our characters for all kinds of reasons. I mean, I really did notice at one point in the course of 3 collections of short stories, everybody ate bacon. This was something I can now like circle. Bacon is one of the worst things about like the spell check thing. You go, oh, is this word repeated? And the computer goes back and says, yes, 30 times. But do you feel like there are qualities that you gave any of your people, or direction that you gave them? It wasn't just them revealing themselves to you, but you were also like, I think I want to say about this.
Yeah.
Whether it's an activity or a quality.
Yeah. It's a very good question for which I don't have a really good answer. With all due respect, Alice Walker, a great writer, the character has ever sat on the edge of my bed.
I know it's disappointing.
And other writers say things like, the characters tell me what to do. And I must be doing something wrong.
No.
I just keep dialing their numbers. What is, I think, sort of going to be unsatisfying about the answer is I don't quite know how I find my way into the character. It happens pretty early, and it's a little bit like what my actor friends go through.
Mm-hmm.
I have found this is sort of an interesting exercise that I have given students sometimes. The thesis being we are souls and lights and whatever we are beneath our ever-changing surfaces. We are also flesh. We are also our surfaces, and it's not like the inner light is just sort of wearing the flesh like a costume. And I will have students, not so practically, but other students go out and pick a stranger and unobtrusively record at least 20 observable physical fact about that person, and only that which you can see. If you hear them speak, you write down the quality of their voice, but note not only the obvious things, their approximate age, their race, their declared gender, but how they walk, how they sit, if you happen to see them sit. And it never fails when each in turn reads the 20 outward physical qualities that anyone could see. Somebody starts to enter the room. It's a little mysterious. I mean, some of the practice of writing is now now they have to get out the door. And then some of it is mysterious. And it's almost like a seance. It's like that person begins to arrive in the room as we simply respect and honor this list of how they manifest.
And you hear them.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's always how I met. Now we're moving.
Yeah.
Right. I hear them.
Yeah.
I mean, they alas do not say Amy. But they say the owl in the tree.
Yeah. How did it work for you? I just had to ask because we never talk about this stuff.
People usually talk about what we're getting. Well, you know, I spent a remarkable amount of time staring out the window and a remarkable amount of time eating Ritz crackers. And it's always a period where I don't wish for the consequences, but I wished I smoked. Because this is the kind of thing you want a cigarette for. You just want to be sitting there like this. I can envision it, and I just want to tell you a Ritz cracker is no substitute. But there you have it. And you see, it's actually the same thing. I'm trying to see them. I'm trying to see them so then I can hear them. And so I'm trying to sort of see. I remember doing an exercise when we were both at the Fine Arts Words Center in Provincetown. A great place to take a writing class if you ever have an opportunity or you're wandering around saying, I would like to write better or more. Where should I go? That's where you should go. And so I had everybody in pairs, and I had about like 8 people who were older people and 8 people who were younger people. I just had them write down each other's physical characteristics. There were 2 things about it. One was you could really sort of, as Michael says, feel the person begin to emerge. The other thing that made me laugh, because I felt it was like plot coming into the room, which is that all the older people looking at the younger people began their descriptions by saying, what beautiful skin. And all of the younger people looking at the older people were like, they seem kind. I was like, there you go, there's a lot for you. But I feel like, you know, I want to hear something. I want them to be able to tell me something. And so often, although it's not always the way the novel goes, in the beginning, there's their voice in the first person. I hear them saying, all I remember is lying on the mat in the courtyard. But I hear that, and then I'm chasing it, you know, for for as long as it takes to catch the rest of it. And one of the things I feel like in your dialogue, you know, you have such a beautiful ear for it, you know, you also give your characters a chance to really address another character, to speak the way, improve, but the way in which people actually speak to each other. When you want to make a point, or you want something to understand something, or one of your characters is reluctantly but definitively not giving the other person what they want. It's
I think that's
not rare.
often the question in writing dialogue. What are you really saying?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you're saying. What are you?
Right. And I feel like you want the rhythm of that. You don't want to overwhelm people with these, you know, 4-page speeches, but you also want, it's one of those great opportunities to let your character reveal who they are, how they frame it, what they say, what they don't say. Let me ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up to all of you and everything you've always wanted to ask me. Oh yeah. So about the pandemic. So about the pandemic, which figures sort of significantly, but I would say not at all heavy-handedly in the novel. What had you been working on it for a while, and then you were like, oh, this elephant.
Yeah. I had been working for a while on a different novel, the pandemic board, and I couldn't find a way. I couldn't imagine a contemporary novel not would act as if there was no pandemic, but I couldn't find a way to work it in without looking like I just worked it in. So I just put that one away and started this one. And you know, the hardest thing, I writing maybe gone a little bit too much about how hard. I don't have to very hard, but it's also thrilling to get to do this and, you know, here. But I felt like, okay, how do you account for the pandemic without writing a pandemic novel? You know, how do you write about human beings who are surviving this or not surviving this? But the focus, which I think is what I want from any story, is on the human beings. So I thought, oh, you can't write about the pandemic and not about the pandemic. You have to write a novel that concerns the pandemic. And I found this structure. It's one day in early April, divided into morning, afternoon, and evening, but it's in characters. The morning takes place the year before the pandemic. Afternoon takes place at the sort of worst of the pandemic, and evening takes place now in what we would call the post-pandemic. So I almost think of the story as a cord that runs through a hole in a cinder block. The cinder block is the pandemic, but the cord starts in this end and ends on this end.
I like that. I do. No, I like it. Well, I think it's very hard to do, and I won't say anything unkind about any other writer, because it is a hard thing to do. I mean, even bad. I never write bad reviews when I do a review, because I just feel like, you know, it is plenty hard to write a shitty book. You know, it's like that's already very challenging. So, you know, I don't want to. My mother would say, "Don't cast asparagus." So I don't want to do that. But I feel like there is, you know, it's not at all sneaky. It's not like, oh, what's coming next in the, you know, 2020. But there's a way in which the experience of the pandemic is, it is like weather, it is like war. It's like what you do in a historical novel, where you don't want to spend 17 pages on the 15-inch high cork wedges the courtesan wore in like wet Venice in the 1400s, which is my idea, the worst kind of historical novel. You want it to be the thing that says, this is the weather, this is the world, this is how people are, this is how they love, and this is how they survive, and this is how people get their hearts broken, and this is what happens next. And I think you just hold that in just perfectly. I'm going to stop with the word perfectly, and I'm going to say, folks, here we are. You know, we'll tell you what we know, and
you know, I have a good segue into our. Another thing that is so great about teaching is we do in the literature class, literature / writing as well as the writing class. It's true in both classes. In literature class, we read like 30 different stories in the course of the semester, and I make them as diverse as possible, from Nathaniel Hawthorne to Carmen Machado. And I am always surprised from semester to semester by the different students' reactions. So I change out, I don't just do the same syllabus every year, but there's a lot of students that have been on it for quite a while. And the huge hit last year, this year, and neither one of them is wrong. These are very smart, devoted, wildly prepared young people, and it's a really helpful annual reminder that all of us, my students and all of us here, read a slightly different version of the same book. First, the writer writes the book, and then the reader writes the book. And the reader is an intimate, vital part of it. Unread doesn't exist. Which makes me all the happier to get to see and talk to actual readers who came out tonight. And it was sort of like, what's on TV alone? So yeah, please, anyone would like to talk about it. Yes.
Kind of a slightly tangential question, but I really enjoyed seeing the opera of that moment. I'm curious what it felt like to have your words sung, and if it made you think anything different about writing after that and feeling.
The Hours was made into a movie some time ago, and much more recently was made into an opera at the Met. And I had little to do with the movie. I had nothing whatever to do with the opera. The two people who wrote that and did for an opera. Anyway, they were perfectly lovely, but they said we really want we would just stay on that side of the door. So I just went to the premiere along with everybody else, and a couple of things. It was, on one hand, I felt slightly disassociated from it. Seeing this beautiful adaptation that was not based on something I wrote, but was not anything I wrote. That's a Metropolitan Opera. And I can assure you that 25 years ago when I was writing it, I had various doubts and various hopes. I wonder if this will ever be played into an opera. And that. What was, I think, sort of funniest about it was they did use some language from the novel. And once or twice I could remember having written a line in my studio in the West Village in New York City, thinking, I bet I can be better than this, but I'll get back to it later, and then never did. And then Renee Fleming is seeing that line. It probably speaks to the whole play again, which is, I'll keep this short. With a novel, you just have to let it go and be okay with what it is. Because some of us have imagined a novel that no one can write. Because it's not only native language, it has whale songs and the sound of constellations make, and there's stress and kind of the feeling comes up, you know, so there's that. There's always that's all I'll do. And then I don't know we'll sing this on the next stage someday. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I've got a question. Or was there another?
Yeah.
Yeah, please go
Is
ahead.
there any particular significance of April 5th, or just kind of throw a dart in the calendar?
You know, that's such a good question. April, because it seemed, you know, there's like stuff, and there's also very practical nuts and bolts stuff. I felt like the middle section that takes place at the height of the pandemic needed to really happen when we were worried that we were getting it from mail, that maybe we didn't wash that banana quite thoroughly enough. So April felt right. And then I was in Texas last night, talking to actually a former student from Columbia who was growing up and he's an editor at the Times now. And he was an author, and he said he had done this kind of guy. Enormous research in April 5th, and he had a few historic events that had happened on April 5th. I took like number 5. It's nice, you know,
Right.
Everybody looks.
Right, it's a good looking date.
Yes.
What is your question, Mike?
Well, I was gonna ask while everybody else is thinking of more questions. I love hearing when authors come to present to us. It's always entertaining and it's a lot of fun to hear any characters or settings or details that maybe have particular meaning to you, or maybe come from a personal place that we might not necessarily catch if we're, you know, as we're just reading the.
You know, yes, but also sort of to me, sort of even more interesting, as it happens, the now grown up husband and father with a responsible job at the New York Times was in a workshop I taught at Columbia 25 years ago. And there are a couple of recurring images in the book. One of them is owls. And I have to remember this anyway. He reminded me that when he was in my bookshop, we had an ongoing friendly argument about an owl. In his story, I insisted that the owl had to have verisimilitude, that it couldn't do something an owl wouldn't do. He said it's fiction. I said but it's about the world. And you know, I thought, well, you know, it's not at all out of the question that owls have been kicking around in the back of my head since I thought about owls in writing with this kid 25 years ago. And I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of just things from your life that feel intuitive that were actually planted a long time ago.
And then you can't hide them. I mean, I think that was one of the worst discoveries for me as a writer, which is whatever it is, it's the owls, it's the 3, whatever it is, it's going to pop out, and it may not be immediately apparent to a reader, especially a reader who doesn't know you, but there's a limit to how much you can hide. Right. Those things that matter to you will come to the surface. They will shape the story, I think, every time, whether it's the little detail or the idea, you know, often for you in which your characters are some kind of a threesome. You know, there's one sort of unit, but there's more than one unit. There's somebody who's the hinge, you know, all of that kind of thing. I think we have time for one more question, and then I know you want Michael to sign. So anything else we can do for you?
Yeah. So I was just in Provincetown yesterday. And, you know, as someone who came out in the 70s, you know.
It's okay, we remember the same.
I just kind of remember. It's been so long. It's, you know, your book on Provincetown really spoke to me. And I remember, you know, I've read a number of your pieces, your novels, but I remember the hours and
you said that every person reads a book and it speaks differently to them. And I have always really appreciated your authenticity around including people who have different sexual orientation from different ways of experiencing the world. The 90s was not an easy time it was both a very opening time, but also still not. And so when you wrote 25, 30 years ago, you were able to bring some of those voices to the forefront. I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, this was sort of conscious when I went earlier on, when I felt like there are the LGBTQ books that are kept in that section, and then there are all the other books that are kept in this section. And I wonder if I could try to write some things that would actually not exactly belong in either section, or belong in both sections. But I was certainly aware in the hours, which is about the 3 women, that I don't think you could really sum up their sexuality in a word or a phrase. By the way, talking about using things in life. I don't usually base characters on people, but there is a character in the hours who was based enough on my mother that she recognized it. And I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I thought that if once she understood that she mattered that much to me, so as to slander her in a novel, that she'd be delighted. I don't know. And it was different. But then they made the movie, and the character, loosely but identifiably based on my mother, was played by Julianne Moore, which made her feel alone. The takeaway is, if you're having conflict with a parent, try to get a movie star to play them.
Excellent. Yeah, we want to make sure that we have plenty of time for the signing. If you have more questions, of course, we'll talk to Michael, and Amy will be signing books also. If you'd like to purchase additional copies of Day or any of the backlist or Amy's novel, we have those just in the other room.
And I'm sorry, just quickly, I think I've mentioned this before, but I just want you to know how not only how glad I am you came, but how much it needs. I've got a book with this. The act of writing and publishing a book is so interesting. It's like putting a message into a bottle and throwing it into an ocean. You get reviews and stuff, but you don't get this visceral sense of who you're actually doing. And I really love that. Yeah.
I know where I was going.
Sure, please.
I mean, the things are so cool. Coming here and sharing us with us.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to the other room.
Yes, let's thank
I mean,